Okay, and before we get started, I put on the website, I put on the consultation form, we started recording the training sessions, and sessions on consultation.
Yeah.
So let me make sure I read your notes correctly.
What's going on?
Okay. June. I thought I read human aggression, was that correct?
Well, I guess, yeah, he like resource guards.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
I see.
Whenever I go to grab something out of his mouth that he doesn't want me to take, he'll like growl and bite at me.
Gotcha. Okay. And then is that what your primary concerns that you're trying to address?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I saw you had worked with the head of board and train, and then you also had a trainer come over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
To help with the resource guarding, or was it just general training at that point?
The trainer, when she came over, he was still a puppy, and it was COVID, so we needed some training help.
Sure.
And then we started doing the resource guarding, and she didn't have any suggestions for that.
Okay.
So then we sent him to the board and for general training. He was terrible on a leash and all that stuff, so they helped with that. And then she told me that the resource guarding wasn't a problem, but he's still doing it to me, so I don't know.
Has he bitten you?
Mm-hmm.
Like an actual bite?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Punctures and everything?
Yeah,
Okay.
my pinky is still healing, so.
Okay. Was this a recent incident?
It was 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fairly close. And what was it over?
It was over a napkin he picked up on
sure.
the sidewalk.
Just something incident.
Yeah.
And then I'm assuming you went to like go grab it from him. Okay. Is it with anything, or is it like with like the stuff that he's not supposed to have?
Stuff he's not supposed to have.
Okay, so like a
But
ball or something.
recently, I've noticed if he has like a ball at the dog park, he'll growl when another dog comes up to him, and he didn't do that before.
Sure. How old is he now?
He's a year and a half.
Okay. Other times you've seen a resource guard?
It's always when we're walking and he'll pick something up off the street.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about like inside the home?
Not as much.
Not as much.
Yeah.
Okay. If he does guard something in the home, what would it be?
Like, if we give him like a bone or something,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to go
You
grab
want
that.
that?
Yeah.
Sure. Did they go over like trading stuff with like a higher value thing like that, or
Not really.
nothing? Okay. And then when you sent them to the board and train was because the original trainer couldn't help.
Yeah.
And then did you tell him like we want him to board and like for the resource guarding?
We needed everything, like, the leash was our biggest concern at that point, because I couldn't even walk him really without me grabbing the leash and tugging on it.
Sure.
They helped a lot with that. We told them about the resource guarding, and they didn't really seem to address it. So I don't know. She told me to just open his mouth all the time at home, which I was doing, but now when he has something in his mouth, I can't get near.
Yeah, no. Anything that puts you near the dog's mouth is not a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? What about this behavior here?
He normally doesn't act like this, so I don't know if he's like.
Might be the new
anxious.
setting. He's a bit anxious. Yeah.
He's
So
normally he's not very calm, but he's like calm in public. Like we go to dinner a lot, so it's.
Okay. So what I'm gonna have you do is go ahead and take your prong and try to scoot it up to the top of his neck here.
There.
Okay, and then you're gonna pull on your prong towards you. Just pull, 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 now pull up, and then relax. Now I'm gonna have you not say sit.
Oh,
Okay? You're gonna just ignore the words, up. And then you're not gonna pet him, you're not gonna touch him, you're not gonna do anything, okay? But every time he gets up, if he tries to paw at you, and if he tries to cry or anything like that, I'm gonna have you just pull straight up on your prong, okay? Anything else?
Our biggest concern right now is the resource guarding.
Okay,
He is jumping on people when they come in the house, and I always try to have him on the leash when they come in to correct that, but it's been hard.
okay,
He's stronger than me, so it's hard for me to correct him sometimes when he's jumping.
sure. I'm assuming before reaching out, you did research on us, on how we train, the methods that we use, and everything like that?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Are you in the city or are you up in the suburb?
the city.
You're in the city, okay. Just because when you sent them to Grays Lake, I was like, that's a trek.
We only used them because a family friend had recommended it.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, it was very far.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so it's funny because I just am wrapping up a program with the golden retriever who resource cards, and then we have another one who's currently here today for a boarded training, also resource cards. So any breed doesn't matter because people always think, oh, like golden retriever, like they're not pull up, keep pulling up, up, and then relax, up, and then relax. People think golden retrievers can't be aggressive or whatever. And every dog can be up, and then relax. Every dog can be up, and relax. It's just a matter of, are they put in a position where they feel they need to be? So in his case, it's around certain resources, okay? Not uncommon. Here, when it comes to resource guarding, what he needs to learn is how, one, I wouldn't even allow him to pick up things if we know he's gonna guard them, right? So like, let's say he's going, you see a napkin on the ground, he's gonna go for the napkin, we would correct that so he learns that picking up stuff outside is not an option. So, technically speaking, if he can't pick up the object, he can't guard it, right? So there's that approach. Then there's the approach of, if I say drop, you just spit out what's in your mouth, okay? So that this way, he has to relinquish it. If you try to take it from him, technically you're stealing, okay, in his mind. Because he's like, finders, keepers, that's okay. Finders, keepers, right? So then he's going to become defensive over it. So that's where teaching him a reliable release command comes into play. When it's at the dog park and he has a ball in his mouth and the dog comes close to him, we can't make him be comfortable with dogs being in the space when he has an object. So if I know I have a dog that will guard something at the dog park, I just make whatever's at the dog park off limits. Because then if you can't guard them, I mean, if you can't hold them, you can't guard them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, because a lot of people push for like, well, I want my dog to be able to still play fetch. At the dog park, I just don't want them to like growl and resource when dogs come. Like, well, that's too complicated for the dog and for the average dog owner. You know, I was like, it's easiest, if you want to play fetch for your dog, great. Go to the park where it's empty and just play fetch for your dog there. I was like, because if your dog is playing fetch, then they're not even worried about the other dogs then. Like, they're not wanting to engage, right? But if he will play with dogs, but then when he picks up a ball, he'll guard it, then I go, just make everything off limits. So then he goes, okay, I'm at the dog park, I can't, hold or obtain that ball, so instead I'm just gonna play with the dogs instead. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. As opposed to trying to get him to have a ball and play with the dogs and be comfortable with that. It's a little too complicated. Can I do it? Yes, but I've been doing this for over 10 years, and then for the average dog, it's a little bit too complicated, okay? So resource guarding is actually, in my opinion, the easiest form of aggression to address because it's contextual. You know, if you're outside and he picks up a napkin, you're like, yeah, he's probably gonna guard that, right? Mm-hmm. So if, obviously you can't control the outside setting, like people just throw stuff, right? But you know, if you pull them away from it, you're not gonna get resource guarding in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the issue is I don't see everything.
For sure, yeah. The other thing is that makes it easier for you is that because it happens outside, you would almost always have your equipment on, meaning your training equipment. So that always gives you the ability to make him relinquish the object without even having to go in his mouth. Okay? So that's where remote collar comes into play. And that's all my dogs here, aside from puppies under 6 months, are trained on e-collar because it's efficient, it's effective. Right off the bat, I get off leash control. When I have my cases, I have 2 resource guarding cases right now that are trained with me. I have the resource guarding golden retriever that just is close to wrapping up his program. E-collar allows us to work with these things without even having to piss the dog off. Because people think, oh, you're gonna come in and you're gonna give the dog a bone, and you're gonna go for the bone, and you're gonna make the dog angry, and then you're gonna use the punisher. I go, no, we don't even have to do that. So he could be over here chewing on a bone that he's not supposed to have, and he could be all the way over there, and you can make him relinquish it without even getting into his space. So then he drops it and he leaves, and then you can walk over and take the object. And we don't even have to worry about the resource guarding. Does that make sense? Pull up, 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 now relax. So yeah, going up into a dog's mouth is never a good idea, because that puts you right in striking range, especially when it comes to resource guarding, and it's not necessary, okay? Questions on any of that stuff so far? So the way this works is, with the remote call, I know he's got a baseline of training, but there's things that have to be done before you can address the resource guarding, okay? So the first thing that we always teach is the heel. I'm assuming he learned heel?
Yeah, he knows how to heel.
Okay, does he heel?
Most of the time.
Okay, how does he pick up the stuff, or when does he pick up the stuff?
He just like grabs it, I don't know, when we're walking on the street.
Do you
So,
use heel?
Yeah,
You do. Okay, so if he's in a heel, he'll grab something.
yeah.
Okay, then he doesn't know heel. Because if he knows, I'm not saying,
Okay.
I know the place you went to, they're not good. I've trained many of their dogs, okay? Which is why we're here. Because if you bring a dog here and you're like, my dog resource guards, right? And we'll go, okay, well, we need at least this time frame. We're going to address the resource guarding, okay? Now, it does happen where we don't see resource guarding here because of the structure that we have, but then we tell the owner, look, we didn't see it here. This is us working with your dog. Your dog did not resource guard with us. But then we work with the client on the resource guarding, because that's what your intention was, correct? So here, when a dog knows a proper heel, his focus is on you and nothing else. Okay, so if he's so focused on you, he's not going to care about the napkin, the chicken wing, or the cigarette butt, or the stick that's on the ground, because he's too tied to you. Does that make sense? So that's what the obedience comes into play. Obedience is, so there's different approaches to this. Obedience is preventative control. I know if I have a dog in a heel, they're not going to pick up crap off the ground, they're not going to be sniffing the ground, they're not going to be, barking at dogs or anything like that, because they're under control. Okay. Now, if you say break and your dog is on the free time and he picks up something there, that's a different context now, because he was on loose time and he happened to find something, right? So then we need the ability to make him drop something, but those are two very different things. So that's why I asked him, like, does he know heel? You said yes. I said, do you use heel? You said yes. Like, and he picks up things while he's on heel. You said yes. I go, then he doesn't technically know heel, because if he did, he wouldn't gamble picking up stuff off the ground. Does that make sense? So here, this is where the e-collar comes into play, because prong is limited. Let's say, if he picks up something, have you tried using the prong to correct him?
Yes.
Okay, will he relinquish?
No.
No. So it's either the correction is not to the degree that he needs, or he's too tough to the prong. Okay, because you could be 6'4", huge, and give your harshest correction on the prong collar, and if the dog is too tough, they don't care. Because dogs bite each other, right? They're willing to puncture and like, I've seen dogs tear each other up. I mean, this is a dog bite, was it 10 stitches here? So they're willing to go there, and with this tool, if you correct them, there's only so much you can do. So if the dog goes, this is nothing to me, now we're stuck, right? So with the remote collar, we don't have to worry about that, because I can make the dog relinquish the object. It's just a matter of, is the owner willing to go high enough on the collar to do so? Okay, so the collars that we use go 0 to 127 in increments of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 127. Are you familiar with the technology of what an e-collar is?
No.
No? Have you ever been to a physical therapist or a chiropractor?
No.
No? Have you ever heard of stim therapy?
Yes.
Okay, so stim therapy, when they put the nodes on the, you want to pull up, you don't want to pet them. Because petting them is reinforcing the anxiousness. Pull up. Up. And relax. And then if he settles, up. And then relax. Good. So stim therapy, when they put the nodes on the muscle and it moves the muscle, that's an e-collar. Okay. People usually think of e-collars like electrocution, where they there's an electric current running through your dog's body. That's not actually what it is. Okay. So it's a muscle contraction, okay? It's not electrocution, it's not electricity running through the dog's body. It's just a muscle contraction, and we use that to shape all the behaviors, okay? And what's nice about it is that on or off leash, we have control. So if you take him to the dog park and he picks up a ball, and you go, I know he's gonna guard that, you can press the button, he spits the ball out. So now there's nothing to guard. Does it make sense? So the first thing that we always have to teach or reteach is the heel, okay? If he's walking with you and pulling or gambling, picking up stuff off the ground, he doesn't have a formal heel, and if you can't make him walk with you like he's supposed to, then you're not gonna make him relinquish things. Does that make sense? If he's able to go against one thing and not have to do it, why should he give you something that he wants, right? So the heel is super important because it helps us teach him how the pressure turns on and how it turns off. So pressure is everywhere. In this case, pressure, like right now when you see me pulling up and pressing down, that's pressure. Okay, I'm putting pressure on him, and this moment he gives me what I'm looking for, I relinquish the pressure. So like earlier when you had him, I was like pull up, and when he gives you the sitting response, you can relax. And every time he'd move, you would just do that, right? So that's pressure. You're putting prong pressure on him. And as soon as he gives you what you're looking for, you relinquish that pressure. E-collar is the same thing, except it's at the press of a button, and it's a muscle contraction, okay? And the level of that pressure is determined on the level of your e-collar. So if you're at 50 and you're pressing the button, then the pressure would be at 50. Does that make sense? So with the heel, it's important with e-collar training because it's something that you practice. I mean, most people walk their dogs 3 times a day, 7 days a week, right? So it's something that you practice 3 times a day, 7 days a week. So you get very familiar with it much more quickly, and he gets familiar with it very quickly as well. E-collar is a stressor, and because it's an aversive. So most people, when they see their dog under stress, they tend to want to lay off, when really you have to continue. Because in order to get over stress, you have to get through it, right? But if we stop, he learns, if I do this, when I feel this, you'll stop. So then how do we train him? Because then he's going to keep playing that game, okay? So we work him through it, and heel, a walking behavior, walking alleviates stress. So the e-collar is building up stress, but the walking is alleviating stress. So it's kind of balancing things out, okay? So it helps them learn how pressure turns on, how it turns off. It's a very non-confrontational exercise, okay? So like most people, and I had a consult with somebody their dog was like human aggressive, and the dog lunged at the trainer, and the trainer yanked on the prong collar to correct the dog, which is technically correct, right? But I wouldn't do that because I'm thinking, well, if the dog is already nervous of the person because they don't know each other, and then that very person they're nervous of corrects them, that just reaffirms in the brain that they should have some kind of apprehension of that person because of that confrontation. Does that make sense? E-collar, the dog doesn't know where it's coming from, so there is no confrontation. So we shape the heel first. That's typically 2 classes. There's the first half. Then I give you your homework. You come back and I review things. Is he picking up stuff off the ground? No, like he's stopped 90% of that. I go, great. So we just have 10% left. We're gonna make a couple of tweaks, work on the second half of heel. You go do your training, you come back. And this is if you're doing in person. And I ask you, how's the resource guarding? I haven't seen him try to pick up stuff off the ground. So technically, we address the resource guarding by him not being able to get the objects, okay? But still important that we cover how do we get him to relinquish something, okay? Now this is where things get tricky because unless he's got really good drive for something, a lot of dogs won't give us the resource guarding, okay? So then we have to figure out a controlled contact. So like let's say he likes to play fetch and he's got really good ball drive. We can use that to teach him how to release something, because we need something that we can practice repeatedly, so that one day should he get something in his mouth and he's off leash and maybe he's off collar as well, and you say drop it, that word is meant to be functional. So, but you have to have practiced it over and over again, where he doesn't even think about it, he just goes and he spits it out, and then we don't get resource guarding, okay? So he has to, by choice, relinquish the object. Otherwise, if you try to go for it, now you're challenging him. And he's saying, hey, I want this pretty bad, and I'm willing to bite you for it. So then you have to think, well, am I willing to confront this dog for this object? Does that make sense? It's like with humans. If someone were to run up and like try to steal my dogs, I would fight them. Those are my dogs. You're not taking my dogs. I don't want you to do with them, right? I'm willing to fight to protect my dogs. So I'm technically resource guarding in a sense, right? But there, you can see the reasoning behind it. He doesn't have our reasoning, right? He doesn't think like this is like a napkin and he's just being a jerk over a napkin, right? He just thinks, I found this thing and it's mine and you can't have it and I'm willing to fight you for it, right? But obviously he has teeth, and us trying to confront him on that is not going to bode well for the human, okay? Questions on any of that stuff so far? So 2 classes on heel. By the 3rd class, we jump right into the resource guarding stuff, okay? Because he needs to know what e-collar is first before we can start using it for the resource guarding, okay? And then we see what do we get. I give you all the information. It's easy, okay? It's easy as long as he gives us the ability to practice. If it's, we bring something, like I have a client right now with the corgi and we try to do resource guarding and her favorite thing is sticks and we bought a bunch of sticks and she wouldn't go for the sticks. And then I brought in one of my dog's no hides and I brought in the no hide and she smelled it, grabbed it, took it over there, dropped it, but then walked away from it. And they're like, this is crazy, she never does this. I go, yeah. I'm like, because she knows there's a setup because of the you know, I'm here and all that stuff. So then I gave them instruction on how to practice the resource guarding at home to see if they could create it or all we need is him to take something, like chew on a bone in the corner for a bit, and as he's chewing on the bone, 10 minutes later, drop it, and then you would use your collar to get him to relinquish it. He would walk away. Once he's gone, you can then go and pick up the object. So drop it means drop what you have and get away from it. It's not just drop it. Because if I say drop it, he spits it right there, and he still wants it, and I go to grab it, still gonna get bit, right? So it's relinquish, but then give space. So that this way we're not worried about the dog re-engaging with the object, okay? And then it's just practice. It takes time. It does take commitment because you have to, let's say he doesn't give you, like you give him a bone, but maybe he doesn't always chew it now, right? Because he's thinking something's gonna happen. So then we start to create this problem of now the dog is distrustful. So then it takes time to get the dog comfortable with like, you can have the bone, but when I say drop it, you're gonna have to spit it out and leave it so I can put it away. Or I might say drop it, and then say, okay, break, you can have it again. So that he learns, oh, sometimes you say drop it and you take it, sometimes you say drop it and you get the habit. So he doesn't pick up on the habit, okay? Questions on any of that so far? If your main concern is the resource guarding, is there anything else that he needs to do? Like how's his recall?
It's okay. I mean, it's not excellent.
Okay, the second thing, so the 2 most important things a dog should know are walking on a leash and come when I call you, okay? Everything else is if you need it. Because there's 6 commands: sit, stay, down, come, place, heel. The way I approach things is I listen to what you're saying, I know what you need and what you're wanting. I see the case and I go, okay, this is, I suggest 3, 6, 9, or 12 classes, right? So here, if your primary concern is the resource guarding, then you're like in the 3 to 6 class range, okay? If you did 3, what I would do is the first class, I would try to condense 2 classes of heel in 1, okay? And then use the second class to jump straight into resource guarding. And then we see what we get. If it's very easy to work with him, perfect, makes life so much easier. If it's not easy, I would give you the instructions, I would show you, and then I would say, go and practice, and then come back when you're ready for class 3, okay? Let's say a couple of months go by, and you're like, hey Jesse, we're making progress, but now we're stuck here. Then I go, come back for class 3, okay? And then I see what's going on, I help you, I give you the instruction, and then you go and you practice that until you get them where you need them to be. If you did 6, it gives us a little bit more of a window. 2 classes on the heel, so we don't have to rush through things because it is a lot of information. Class 3, we jump into resource guarding, see how he does. Let's say he's like kind of in the middle, I go, it's okay, do what you can with this. I see you week 4, we switch from resource guarding to recall with remote collar. Because so with prong, the problem with prong is if you take this leash off, you have no means of reinforcing your commands, right? So if he's at the dog park and he's playing with his friends, and then you call him, but he's having a good time, well, now you have to either keep calling him, or then you gotta walk over and grab him, right? When really he should just, whatever he's doing, whether he's chasing something, he's playing, if he's running towards the street, anytime you call your dog, it should be, get over here, right? So then 4th class, we jump into recall, and I'll probably ask you about the resource guarding, just to touch base. And then classes 5 and 6, we can either revisit the resource guarding if you're having trouble, or if you want to learn more stuff, we can teach more things if the resource guarding is going well. But it gives you a couple of classes to play with as variables, okay? Because the main thing you need is heal and the resource guarding stuff for what you're needing on one thing so far. But then I'm thinking, well, because I know resource guarding can be a bit finicky and you might need time, then I would suggest 6 just so you can get a better recall, but then it gives us more time to touch on the resource guarding so that if you're having trouble or things are popping up, as we're having the program, the classes, I can give you more information and then we work on that class's topic. And then you're always welcome to like save the class for later to come back if you're still having issues with recall, because I'm not recall with resource guarding, because you're gonna need time. It's not something that can be done like in a day. It's easy to teach. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. It just takes time and repetition to get it to the point where it's drop it and he just spits it out. Okay? Questions on any of that?
Well, I guess, I have no idea how to use the collar, and my husband and I both work. Is this something that we would do like a daycare train or board and train too?
Are you looking for more of like a board and train option, or are you looking for more like an in-person option?
I mean, I guess both.
Okay, so I'll give you the pros and cons of both. Okay? You learn so much more with in-person as a pro, right? You learn a ton more. I don't do anything with the dog. I coach you through everything. I'm present with you. We're here, at the park. We're here. We're in person, and I coach you through everything. It's very easy to learn, okay? And it's not only easy, but it's effective right off the bat. So I train out of Oz Park. Are you familiar with Oz Park? It's the busiest park in Chicago. It's in Lincoln Park. Bikers, rollerbladers, strollers, off-leash dogs, kids. There was a big party over there, baseball games, tennis courts. Like, it's just crazy busy, right? We train there. So we're in the middle of a very busy environment when we're doing the obedience stuff. So for the owner, they're not only working in a very realistic environment, they're also getting the results in that environment. So when they leave and come back, we're just building off of success. As opposed to, and it doesn't really matter technically speaking, but most places, like, you're in a quiet room by yourself with nothing going on, but as soon as you go outside to the real world, all of a sudden things fall apart, right? Because there's so much to contend with. So in person, you learn a ton, and we're in a very distracting environment, okay? The resource guarding we would probably do here because we need a quiet environment so he can focus on the objects and stuff. But everything obedience-wise, ideally we would be outside, unless it's like inclement weather, like rain or something. So you learn a lot more. The con is it takes more time, right? Because I'm telling you, like, I can teach you the resource guarding, but if he's not giving us consistency on being able to practice, it's gonna take you a couple of months, right? To maybe even half a year, depending on how bad it is. But that's the same with us. So the con to us would be, well, all the training is done with us. We already know how to train dogs, right? But what if we don't see the resource guarding? And that does happen. So then, not that we don't work on it, but if we can't work on anything we don't see. Does that make sense? So if you did a board and train, what we do now is we film the first session of every command that we teach. So if we do a board and train, even if he's here for a week, we cover all 6 commands: sit, stay down, come, place, heel. Okay, we reteach them. In his case, we reteach them using the e-collar. We film the first session of everything that we teach, and then we make a video of this of your dog, and we send it to you. Okay, and then you would review that video. You would take what you learned from that video, and you would apply it to your dog to transfer the training over. Okay, when you're ready, you would then come back for your follow-up, and you could say like, hey, all the heel, the sit, the down, everything's great, but we are having trouble with recall. So then in that follow-up session, we help you work on the recall, okay? Or let's say he's here, we can't work on the resource guarding, and the obedience stuff is working really well for you, like you have no problem with that, and you would like us to use the follow-up sessions to help you with the resource guarding. We can absolutely do that too, okay? So the follow-up is for you to use for whatever you want, technically speaking. Mainly it's for people to help kind of close the gap on any of the obedience stuff that they didn't pick up on with the e-collar. But we've had cases like there is with the resource guarding where we don't see it here, so the owner asks like, well, can I use my follow-up to work on the resource guarding since my dog didn't do it with you? We say absolutely, because that's what our intention was, okay? And then we would show you, and then you'd go off and you just practice stuff, and depending on what program you do, you get a different number of follow-up lessons with each program. Obviously, if the dog is here for longer, you get more follow-up classes. When we're doing something more specific, like if we have a dog that is dog reactive and the owner wants us to work on the dog being socialized with other dogs, the minimum is 2 weeks. Because the first week is just purely getting them acclimated to e-collar, okay? By the second week, we can then start working on the behavioral stuff of trying to socialize that dog with other dogs, okay? Same thing here, if we're doing resource guarding, it's 1 week, because if we try to do resource guarding the first week, because everything's so fresh, we're probably not gonna see it. So we do at least 2 weeks. So by the second week, he should be comfortable enough, and we'll revisit the resource guarding to see if we can create it, okay, and then work on it. As long as he's giving us something consistent, like even if we can play fetch with him, that's all we need him to do. So we can practice the drop it, and you can see how we do it, how we practice it. So that when you get your video, you can take that stuff and just apply it, and then you come back for your follow-ups for anything that you're not understanding correctly, okay? So they both have their pros and cons. In person, we learn a lot more. Con, it just takes longer, okay? Board and trained, we get a lot of stuff done within a short time frame. Con is, everything is tied to us, so then we have to transfer it to you, which is what those videos are for. But then also there can be a little bit of a disconnect, because even though you see the videos and you watch your dog being trained, it's not the same thing as doing it yourself and like troubleshooting and figuring out things for yourself, okay? Other cons to the board and train would be, we may not see the resource guarding. We'll do our best to try to do controlled contacts, but that's a thing that could be a potential, but we can always work on it as like a follow-up class, okay? Other questions? We wouldn't really do, if it was just obedience, for the daycare and train, the 2-week equivalent is 10 days. The difference between board and train and daycare train, of course, is board and train, he's here 24/7 for the period of time you choose. And daycare and train, he'd be here from, as early as 7 to as late as 7. During an average daycare day, we train them throughout the day. Board and trains are nice because since all the dogs leave end of day for daycare and stuff, we have more time to commit at the end of day, as opposed to the day when all the dogs are here. He gets worked with everybody. It's just harder to put into the schedule, like, okay, we need to make sure we schedule his resource guarding training because we have like 40 dogs in, okay? But technically, because we've had a couple of dogs with resource guarding issues that have done board and trains with, daycare and trains with us, one of them being a golden, but his is like simpler. So, questions? In terms of the e-collar, I'm assuming he's what, 60, 70 pounds?
He's 79 pounds.
Okay, so he's 80 pounds. So the collar that he would need is the Dog Show Black Edition. It's meant for 70-pound dogs and over. If you try to go for like a lower power collar, the problem is output. So like, if you go to my YouTube channel, you can look up the dog's name is Beau, B-E-A-U. He's a golden retriever. He's one of my resource guarding cases. And when we were doing the resource guarding here, we need to go as high as 80 to like 90, okay? And he's only like a 60-pound retriever. He's not big, but he was so intent on the bone or the stick that we're using, it took a lot of power with a high-powered collar to get him to relinquish it. So had the owners gone with a lower-powered collar, there is the potential that he would have not even given it up, because he's physically very tough. despite the fact that he's a sweet golden retriever. Okay, so definitely for a dog that's 79 pounds, you're gonna want a black edition collar. That's the highest power collar there is. So this way you're not worrying about, am I gonna have enough power to get him to relinquish something, especially something high value. Those you can get them through Amazon. You can also get them through us. I don't care where you get them. I just care that you get the correct e-collar. And Maria would send you this information. She would give you the make and model that you would need. They run, I believe, 325-ish with tax. They last a very long time. It's a fully waterproof system, both the transmitter and the receiver. I've had my e-collars for about 8, 9, 10 years now. And the only thing I've needed to do is replace the battery, because the battery is a rechargeable lithium battery, much like your cell phone. So over time they do wear out. So then you can either call Doctra and they'll replace them themselves if you send it in, or you can order a replacement battery and replace it yourself.
So if we do train him this way, is he gonna have to wear this e-collar forever?
Only when you need it. Okay, so like right now when you take him for walks, do you use your prong collar?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be the same thing, right? You take him out for a walk, you have your e-collar. Because you can't account for life, or the things that might happen, you know? Like if he's off leash and all of a sudden he's 30 feet away and he finds something over there, and he's like, well, you're 30 feet away, so he thinks you can't stop him, right? You still have a means of stopping him. If he's a great dog inside the house, you don't need it. If he's great when people come over, you don't need it. If it's just when he's at the park or when he's walking or whatever, or off leash, then you would have it on. It's not that you're always using it. If you do the homework, either way, board and train or in person, if you do the homework, the collar is there just in case you need it, okay? Easiest way to explain this would be, do you drive? Do you go the expressway?
Mm-hmm.
Do you go the speed limit?
No.
Most people don't go the speed limit, right? But you see a squad car, what happens?
Brake.
Right, you slow down because you don't want to take it. You don't want to get pulled over. So think of the e-collar as a cop on a collar. It's nothing like, because people always think like, when does a dog just learn? Right? When does a dog just learn and the dog is a good dog? I go, that's not a thing. You know, it's a thing that we're taught growing up. It's called opportunistic behavior, which means if you have the opportunity to like not follow the rules, you may or may not take advantage. The most common thing would be speeding, right? Most people don't go the speed limit on the expressway. Most people go like 80, 85 on a 70, right? But you see a squad car and all of a sudden everybody slows down. That's opportunistic behavior, okay? Same thing for this guy. If he's off the e-collar and he's outside on a walk, he's gonna take advantage. He's not gonna be as obedient. You have the e-collar on, he knows that you can actually make him do stuff, and the e-collar is something that can override him. All of a sudden he's a much more well-behaved dog, okay? So it has nothing to do with the training, it has nothing to do with our skills as a trainer, it's simply just opportunistic behavior, okay? Now, there are certain commands we want to be functional on or off leash, right? One of them being the drop it in your case. But it takes a lot of practice and repetition to get that, so that he thinks, when I hear drop it, he doesn't even second guess it, he just spits it out. The problem that people have is when they try to do these things, when they tell the dog to drop it, they usually give the dog a few seconds to do it, and if they don't do it, they tend to repeat. Whereas for us, if I say drop it, within half a second, if he doesn't do it, I'm already tapping on the collar. So he thinks when Jesse says drop it, it's spit it out, otherwise that correction comes in immediately. So because he knows that correction is going to come in immediately every single time, even off the collar, when I say drop it, he's going to spit it out, because his brain doesn't have time to think otherwise, okay? So it's really the humans that kind of, I understand why they do it, because they want to give the dog the opportunity to avoid the correction, but the correction is ultimately what gets the dog to do it reliably. You know, so as long as you're doing the practice and you're rehearsing everything like it's supposed to, we should get there, it's just going to take time. Other questions? So you have a couple of choices. If you want to do in person, minimum for the resource guarding is 3 classes. Okay, I'm going to put 1 class on heel, and I'll try to condense as much as I can in 1 class. So we have 2 classes for resource guarding. Okay, we have class 2, see what we get, and then depending on how he responds, if it's very easy to practice with them, it makes life so much easier. If it's not, then I'll kind of give you instructions, and I would say go off and practice, and don't come back for your 3rd class until you're ready. Okay. If you do 6, 2 on heel, by the 3rd class we're going into recall, But then since you're doing 4, 5, and 6, we can touch base on those classes. And if we need to revisit it, resource carding, we can. If you're doing a daycare and or board and train option, the minimum would be either like a 10-day daycare and train or a 2-week board and train, okay? With the board and train, you get the most follow-up. I believe the number of classes you get with the 2-week board and train, I believe is 4 hours of follow-up. So 4 one-hour sessions, okay? And you can use those whenever you'd like. There's no time frame, they don't expire. So if you use them, if you use the first class and everything is great, the resource carding is great, all that stuff is great, you can just save your 3 classes and use them whenever you want. If you want to use them immediately, you can do that as well. We don't care, it's very lenient. With the daycare and train, you get a lesser number of follow-ups. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but all this information is on my website, okay? Other than that, I don't anticipate any real issues other than the resource carding. If he gives us something to work with is always the hardest part, okay? If you would like to see what does this look like, you can go to my YouTube channel. You can access it through my my website. You can click on any video on my website. It should take you to my YouTube channel. And you can just search the name Beau, B-E-A-U, okay? And you'll see he's a golden retriever. And I believe it's like class 3 or 4 and it says resource carding. And you can click on it. And his is a good one because he gave us something to work with consistently. I have a couple other cases with resource carding, but they're not up yet. But I believe if you search up resource carding on my channel, it should pull up just classes that we've done on it. But Beau's is a really good one. That when everything is working like it should, it's pretty straightforward. Okay? Anything else? So that's pretty much it. Maria will get in contact with you. You can mull it over. You can do either or. My suggestion is in person. The con of in person, of course, is there might be a bit of a wait, depending on your availability. Most people are 9 to 5, so my evenings and weekends are the hardest to get into. But if you have daytime availability like this, it's easier because not many people book these times.
Yeah, I'm a nurse, so I only work 3 days a week, so I'm more flexible. But my husband, which he needs to come because
Correct.
he didn't follow the instructions as well from the last place we went to.
Mm-hmm.
He's more of a like 9 to 5, so
Gotcha.
it'd be harder.
Sure. So you can mull it over, and then if you do the boarding train or daycare train, you'd be working with my other trainer, Enrique. Okay. So I solely handle private in-person clients, and Enrique does all our boarding trains and daycare trains, and then he does all the follow-up as well. Okay. So then you would coordinate with him in terms of that. If you did a boarding train, Maria wouldn't, or daycare train, Maria wouldn't book that. She would put you in contact with Kim, who's my kennel manager, and she's the one that handles all the scheduling for those things. Because we've had to like disperse kind of responsibilities because we were getting so overwhelmed with all the boarding trains and daycare and trains and private clients. You know, it's just getting crazy. So everybody has their own role here. So if you decided to work in person, you would just tell Maria and she would continue working with you because she handles my calendar. If you told Maria, hey Maria, I'm gonna do a boarding train, she would put you in contact with Kim, and then Kim would be in contact with you to get you scheduled for that, okay? And then just make sure to make a note of, you know, I would like my dogs, you know, to be worked on with resource guarding. And then we'll do our best to work on that and then let you know what we get, okay? Or daycare train, if you choose a daycare train. Anything else? Okay, was it a pleasure meeting with you?
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Not anything out the ordinary here. I see this stuff all the time. So if anything else pops up, feel free to let us know.